Hello and welcome to Handi-Link, sponsored by the Italian-Canadian Handi-Capable Association. I'm your host, Cam Wells. The first segment of our show, I'll be chatting with Deirdre Floyd, epilepsy expert. Tell me a little bit about your work concerning epilepsy.
Well, actually, I've been volunteering. I'm actually a full-time volunteer for the Canadian Epilepsy Alliance, and I serve in the role as president. I've been volunteering for approximately over 25 years in reference to epilepsy, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I have epilepsy. And I've had epilepsy since I was 13 years old, but I did work for a number of years, and then my seizures changed, and then I felt that I could contribute in other ways when I couldn't work. So I started volunteering for a local epilepsy association in Halifax.
So, what sorts of changes have you seen over the course of time in your work?
In relation to epilepsy itself, well, one very positive thing is that there have become more different medications and treatments available for individuals who have epilepsy. And I would say that over the course of time, thanks to the internet, people are able to source out information. The one thing that we try and remind people is that they look for credible sources on the internet in relation to different factors about epilepsy. The definition of epilepsy is to have recurrent seizures, and that we want to get the message out that there are different types of seizures and how a person responds to them. We certainly promote the appropriate steps for first aid for someone who witnesses the seizure. So that's one of the things. I think the other thing is that we, as the Canadian Epilepsy Alliance, which is a collaboration of grassroots agencies across Canada, we always focus on quality of life for individuals living with epilepsy and their families. So there are approximately a number of people live very well with seizure disorders, and they take their medication. But then there are some individuals who fall in the category that is difficult to control their seizures. So we collectively deal with advocacy issues and promotion of education about epilepsy in schools and to employers and different groups so that they get accurate information about what epilepsy is and what are the appropriate steps to follow for first aid. And that someone who has epilepsy is the condition they have, it's not who they are.
So, do you find that there are any myths or stereotypes concerning epilepsy?
I think one of the myths is that people are quick to identify a tonic-clonic seizure or a generalized seizure, but some of the other seizure types that are, and when I say tonic-clonic, some people use the old term that's known as grand mal. And so it's a generalized seizure where it affects both hemispheres of the brain. So they're used to seeing a convulsion. And some people are under the false impression, for example, that you can swallow your tongue. So you're supposed to put something in the person's mouth, which is not true. You can't physically swallow your tongue. But there are certain first aid steps in reference to that. To stay calm, protect the person from injury, time the seizure, and if it lasts longer than 5 minutes, to call 911. You gently roll the person on the side when able. And then afterwards, a person who has a seizure, they're somewhat confused. So in that instance, you stay with them and wait till they fully are alert, and then, ask if they need you to call somebody. There are other types of seizures that are formerly known as petit mal, but are partial seizures. And so those, depending on where the seizure happens, the symptoms reflect that. So, for example, with myself, I could have something where it's a twitch of the arm. It's a seizure, but it's just that it doesn't go into a convulsion. And there are also absence seizures where you have staring episodes. So one thing that quite often happens is that people who watch different TV shows, they could be TV medical dramas that portray certain seizure types, what often happens is that there are things that are portrayed inaccurately on those shows, and they take that as the way you're supposed to handle things. And so there was a paper done by epilepsy specialists a few years ago that watched some of these popular TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, House, different things. And what they found was that there was a significant amount of these shows that portrayed first aid for seizures inappropriately. So it was something that was done with research-based things that, sort of backed up our idea that we needed to get the word out there of what to do for different seizures in reference to first aid.
So, in your time raising epilepsy awareness, has there been any success moment that stands out for you?
Well, I think one of the success moments is that people are becoming more aware of how common epilepsy is. It's about 1 in 100 people that are affected by epilepsy. It's more common than you think, and I think that it's brought an alertness that people. I always think that people want to help somebody if they're in distress, and I think that because it's becoming, people are more aware, like in the general public, about epilepsy, that they're learning more about how to respond. What we always want to verify and get the word out is that there are appropriate steps to respond to a seizure, and we want to make sure that that's followed. And I think one of the other successes, a young lady in Nova Scotia, Cassidy Megan, who had epilepsy, and it was the result of a school presentation at her local school, because she didn't want to talk about her epilepsy. So the result was that after we did the presentation, and we certainly didn't single her out, she realized that her classmates were more interested in asking questions. So she wanted to disclose she had epilepsy. And so the result of that was that she wanted to have a special day during March, which is Epilepsy Awareness Month. And so she called it Purple Day. Lavender is the color for epilepsy. In some cultures, it represents isolation and solitude. And so from there, the campaign took off. So the result of that, after getting different groups involved in Canada and around the world, the Canadian government passed a law called the Purple Day Act. And what that meant was that March 26th was a designated day for epilepsy awareness in Canada. So I think that's been a really good success. And what it's done, it's empowered other people across Canada to get involved, because someone living with epilepsy or a family member, they're the true spokespeople that can really convey the message to their friends and members of the general public about what it's like living with epilepsy.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to do this, but if you can stay on the line for a sec, that'd be great.
Can I just mention two other things? We're going to be launching our new website this fall, so stay tuned for that. And anyone who wants to get more information about epilepsy, we have a toll-free number in Canada, 1-866-EPILEPSY, and that'll connect you with the closest agency in your area.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Cam.
Of course. How is it, my friends, that conditions like epilepsy are still so misunderstood? Fact is, there are campaigns and there are efforts being made to highlight invisible disabilities. You might never know a person has epilepsy on first glance. That makes the condition no less real, makes the need for support and understanding no less real. You can't just assume that one set of facts that you happen to have heard in passing about a condition is all there is to it. For the fact is, there are different levels, as with any disability. There are different responses, and the strength of the individual will always play its role. The fact is, things like the Spotlight campaign to bring awareness to invisible conditions, I think this can have potentially a great effect for conditions like epilepsy or mental illness or learning disabilities, hard of hearing, anything of that nature. Because the fact is, you can't just trust what you see on first glance. But if you keep an open mind and have an open heart, get to know a person before you decide how their condition is going to affect them, before you decide they have nothing valid to say or to contribute based on how they move or speak, spend a little time with them. You might come to understand that regardless of what makes a person special, they are all just people of strength and character. And I'm always impressed when I hear the story of a full-time volunteer working to make things better, devoting themselves to the cause of individuals with disabilities. It's an amazing thing, because in that sense you're getting immersed in the culture and the stories of these people. Handi-Link will be right back after these commercial messages, so stay tuned.